My brother slammed papers on the table and said, "You never deserved this house, Emily. Mom knew that." My sister leaned in and whispered, "Just sign it and stop embarrassing yourself." I looked up at both of them and said quietly, "You sure about that?" The judge cleared his throat and asked for the 27-page will. "My name is Hannah Whitmore, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a public school librarian in the same small town where I grew up. It's not a flashy life. There are no corner offices or business cards with fancy titles. Just quiet mornings, the smell of old books and dust, and kids who need someone to care. I stayed close to my parents while my siblings chased bigger things. My older brother Daniel was always the favorite. Successful real estate agent, confident smile, the kind of guy who could walk into any room and own it. My sister Claire admired him endlessly, and usually followed his lead without question. While they built careers in the city, I was the one driving Mom to her doctor visits. I was the one doing grocery runs on Tuesday mornings, and sitting up on those long nights when Dad couldn't sleep. I'd hold his hand in the dark, and talk about nothing until his breathing finally slowed. Despite everything I did, family gatherings always made me feel invisible. My siblings had a way of looking right through me. They joked about my job constantly. "Still shelving books, Hannah?" Daniel would say with that smirk. Claire would add, "Must be nice having zero responsibilities." They'd laugh together, and I'd smile because fighting never felt worth it. But here's something important about me. I never chased money or approval. I didn't need applause for doing the right thing. I cared about loyalty and family, about showing up when it mattered. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. If you've ever been underestimated because your life doesn't look impressive to others, hit subscribe. Drop a like if this story feels familiar. Leave a comment if you've been judged for choosing to care instead of choosing to climb. Click hype if you've ever had to prove people wrong. Both my parents passed away within a single year. Dad went first, quietly, in his sleep one November night. Mom followed 5 months later, like she just couldn't find a reason to stay. The grief sat heavy on my chest for weeks. I could barely eat. The house still smelled like Mom's lavender lotion and Dad's morning coffee. And every room carried a conversation I'd never get to have again. I assumed the family home would remain shared among us or sold fairly, with the money split 3 ways. That seemed reasonable. That seemed like what a normal family would do. Then one afternoon Daniel called a family meeting. He drove down from the city in his black SUV, parked in the driveway like he already owned the place, and walked inside without knocking. Claire came with him. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we used to eat Sunday dinners together. Daniel placed a stack of legal papers in front of me. He didn't ease into it. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Mom promised the house would be mine. You were just the caretaker." I felt the air leave my lungs. I shook my head slowly. That's not what Dad told me. He pushed the papers closer. It was a typed document claiming partial ownership, based on some verbal agreement he said our parents had made. He said they'd always intended for him to inherit the property because he was the one who could do something with it. Claire nodded beside him like a backup singer. "You already lived there rent-free for years," she said. "Isn't that enough?" I didn't sign. I told them both I needed time, and Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't argue that day. He just collected his papers and left. But 3 weeks later I opened my mailbox and found court papers inside. Daniel was suing me for full ownership of the house. In the court filings he claimed I had manipulated our parents while they were sick. He said I pressured them into letting me stay there, that I isolated them from the rest of the family. The humiliation spread quickly. Relatives started messaging me. Maybe Daniel's right. Don't drag this through court, Hannah. Think about what Mom would want. At the first hearing Daniel spoke to the judge with that confident voice of his. My sister took advantage of our parents' weakness, he said, smooth as glass. I sat quietly in my chair while strangers in the gallery watched me like I was on trial. Then Daniel's lawyer delivered what he thought was the finishing blow. He said confidently, "Your Honor, there is no valid written will." The courtroom murmured. I said nothing, because I knew something they didn't. The betrayals didn't stop at the courthouse. They followed me home. A few weeks after the first hearing, Daniel organized a barbecue at the house. My parents' house. The one I was still living in. He set it up in the backyard without telling me, invited cousins and aunts and uncles, and never once mentioned it to me. I found out through social media. Cousins posted photos online with captions like "Future homeowner Daniel hosting." There were pictures of people laughing on the patio my father built with his own hands. I could smell the charcoal through the open window. The sound of their laughter drifted into the kitchen where I sat alone, staring at my phone. When I confronted Claire about it later, she didn't even flinch. "You're making things difficult for everyone," she said, like I was the problem. Like caring about the truth was an inconvenience. Then came the lies. Daniel started telling extended family that I had refused to let our mother see her friends during her illness. He said I kept her locked away, controlling who visited and when. It was a complete fabrication. I had done the opposite. I drove Mom to every social event she had the energy for. I called her friends when she was too tired to dial the phone herself. But Daniel's version spread faster than the truth ever could. One Sunday at church, an elderly neighbor pulled me aside. She looked at me with pity and confusion. "Why were you so controlling with your mom?" she asked. The question hit me like a slap. That's when I realized what Daniel was doing. He was quietly rewriting the family narrative, turning me into the villain of a story I had actually lived as the hero. Then the legal pressure intensified. Daniel's lawyer sent a settlement offer that read more like an eviction notice. It said I had to move out within 30 days. Daniel would generously allow me to keep some furniture. He called me one evening, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "You can't afford this fight," he said. "Just sign." I held the phone tight against my ear. "I'm not leaving," I said. He laughed. "Then enjoy losing in court." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I started organizing paperwork and memories from my parents' final years. Old letters, receipts, appointment records. Things I'd kept not because I thought I'd need them, but because they mattered. And while sorting through everything, I remembered something Dad once told me on a night when he was too tired to pretend. He looked at me from his chair and said, "People show their real selves when money's involved." He was right. Instead of reacting emotionally, I stayed calm. I stopped arguing with relatives. I stopped defending myself on the phone. I let the silence speak for me. And somewhere inside that silence, a quiet confidence began to grow. They believed I was powerless. But they had no idea what was already waiting inside a locked drawer. During the years I spent caring for my parents, I kept careful records. Not because I was suspicious. Because I was thorough. I saved emails between family members, voice messages Daniel and Claire had left over the years, and medical documents tracking every appointment, every prescription, every late-night hospital visit. But the most important piece was something my father asked me to safeguard. What they didn't know was that my father never trusted verbal promises. He was a quiet man, but he understood people. One evening, about 2 years before he passed, he called me into his study. The room smelled like cedar and old ink. He handed me a sealed envelope, thick and heavy. His hands were trembling slightly, but his eyes were steady. "If anyone fights over this house one day," he said, "give this to the right person." I didn't ask questions. I never opened it. I simply stored it in a fireproof folder inside a locked drawer in my bedroom closet. It sat there for years untouched. When the legal dispute began and Daniel's claims grew louder, I finally pulled it out. I broke the seal carefully, like opening something sacred. Inside was a 27-page will, notarized and witnessed by 2 independent parties. It didn't just distribute the house. It included detailed explanations of our parents' decisions, written in my father's careful hand and typed by a lawyer. And there was something inside those pages that even I didn't expect. A section explaining specifically why they chose me to inherit the home. I closed the folder and placed it back in the drawer. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I waited for the right moment. I needed help, and I knew exactly where to find it. I contacted Mr. Aldridge, a retired lawyer who had once handled my parents' legal matters years ago. He lived on the edge of town in a small house with a garden out front and stacks of legal journals on every surface. When I called, he remembered my father immediately. "Your father was meticulous," he told me over the phone. His voice was calm and certain. If he prepared something, it would be thorough. I brought the envelope to his home the following afternoon. He sat at his kitchen table, put on his reading glasses, and opened the document. He read quietly for several minutes. The only sound in the room was the ticking of a wall clock and the occasional turn of a page. Then he looked up and smiled slightly. "This changes everything," he said. He agreed to come out of retirement to represent me in court. I could have cried. Meanwhile, Daniel grew more arrogant by the day. He told relatives the case would be over soon. At a family dinner I wasn't invited to, he joked openly. "Once I get the house back, I might flip it for double the value." Claire laughed along, of course. He even started meeting with contractors about renovations. Neighbors told me they'd seen him walking the property with a man carrying blueprints. He was measuring rooms in a house that wasn't his. I didn't react publicly. I didn't post anything online. I didn't call anyone to complain. I simply waited for the final court hearing. They thought the house was already theirs. They just didn't know the real story hadn't been told yet. The final court hearing arrived on a Tuesday morning. The courtroom was small but full. Relatives sat in the gallery. A few neighbors too. The air smelled like floor polish and old wood. Daniel sat at his table in a pressed suit, looking relaxed. Claire was behind him in the first row, hands folded neatly in her lap. His lawyer spoke first, arguing aggressively. He repeated every claim from the original filings. He said I had manipulated our parents during their most vulnerable years. He said I had isolated them. And he stated once again firmly that there was no written will. Daniel stood when it was his turn. He spoke directly to the judge, voice smooth and rehearsed. "My sister took advantage of them, Your Honor. She used their illness to secure her own comfort." The judge listened without expression. Then he turned to my side of the room. Mr. Aldridge stood slowly. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and said calmly, "Your Honor, we'd like to submit a document." The courtroom clerk walked over and received a thick packet. The judge took it, flipped to the first page, then the second. His eyebrows rose. "This appears to be 27 pages, the judge said. Mr. Aldridge nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. The last will and testament of Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore." Daniel's smile disappeared. It didn't fade. It dropped, like a mask falling off a shelf. The judge began reading sections aloud. "The house was legally left entirely to me. Our parents had explained their reasoning in detail. One passage stated that I had cared for them daily without ever asking for anything in return. I drove them to every appointment. I held their hands through the hardest nights. I never once made them feel like a burden." Then came another passage, and the courtroom went completely still. Daniel had repeatedly pressured our parents to sell the house years earlier. Attached to the will were printed emails showing him pushing them to liquidate the property so he could invest the money. He wanted them to move into assisted living before they were ready, not for their sake, but for his wallet. Daniel shot up from his chair. "That's taken out of context," he shouted. The judge stared at him. "Sit down." Mr. Aldridge wasn't finished. He added one final detail. Daniel had signed documents years earlier acknowledging the existence of this will. His own signature was on file. The courtroom was silent. No murmurs. No whispers. Just the sound of the truth settling into every corner of that room. The judge reviewed everything carefully. Then he ruled the will valid. Case dismissed. Daniel sat frozen in his chair. Claire wouldn't look at me. The judge spoke one final time. "The matter is settled. The house belongs to Ms. Whitmore." I walked outside the courthouse into the afternoon sun and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not victory. Not revenge. Just peace. The kind that comes from knowing the truth finally had a voice. Daniel stormed past me on the steps without a single word. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched, and he didn't look back. Claire lingered for a moment near the door. She walked up to me slowly and said quietly, "We didn't know about the will." I looked at her. "You never asked." She didn't respond. She just turned and followed Daniel to the parking lot. I went home that evening and stood in the kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet. I could almost hear Dad's voice in the hallway and Mom humming in the garden. I decided to stay. Not because the house was a prize, but because it was full of memories that mattered more than money ever could. Over the next few weeks, I renovated the garden Mom loved. I planted her favorite flowers and repainted the little wooden bench Dad made for her. Neighbors who had watched the drama from a distance slowly returned with kindness. Some brought food. Some just came to sit on the porch and talk. The betrayal had hurt deeply. It left scars I'll carry for a long time. But it also revealed something important. It showed me who truly valued family and who only valued property. In the end, the house didn't prove my worth. The truth did. If your family ever tried to take advantage of you financially, you know how painful that can be. It's a loneliness that's hard to describe because the people hurting you are the ones who were supposed to protect you. Share your story in the comments so others know they're not alone. Subscribe to stay connected with this community. And click hype to help this story reach someone who needs to hear it today. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else who's going through something similar. Thank you for being here and for listening. It means more than you know.